discussion today about human nature and just different things that are upon my heart. Now, I got up pretty early this morning and was kind of looking at what am I going to, look at today. Now, I started off, of course, in the last little bit, I've been studying the life of Abraham, the man of faith. I love this guy. He's so human and so very much an example of what we do right and what we don't do right. You have a guy who leaves the Ur of the Chaldees, heads down to Canaan, and his relationship is all over the place. And yet, God is able to use him. Now, I thought about this morning, James chapter 4, verse number 2. It says, this is our human condition. He said, this is what James says. He says, you desire, but you don't have. So what do you do when you don't get what you want? Often what we do is we destroy those who are around us who have what we don't have, or we slander, or we envy, and that's very, very sad. Then he says, you covet, but you cannot get what you want. That's because your motivation is wrong. And then he says, you quarrel and fight. So here he's giving us the basic thoughts of the human condition. You see, unfortunately, we have a tendency to go towards the dark side or the negative things of life. Remember that song from I think it's The Life of Brian, where it says, go to the sunny side of life. But the reality is that we seem to head to the wrong side. And you say, okay, I believe we're getting better. Oh, really? Have you actually been in a room full of what we would call toddlers? I saw that so actively done when, especially when we had in our church in Hay River, we had a couple of play groups that were meeting in the upper auditorium of our building. And my wife and I, we were foster parents at the time, and we would take our foster children who were under the age of 5, often usually under the age of 3, but 4, and we would take them to this play group. And we saw the human condition in perfect display. We would have our little guy, Adrian, or we would have, Isabel, or whatever kid we had at the time. And they were playing very nicely. And some kid would come over and say, I want that. And they would say no. And then all of a sudden, someone would get bonked on the head, or someone would be shoved, and we would see raw human emotion, of course, in action. You say, well, that's a toddler. Yeah, that is a toddler. But if that particular behavior is not curbed in some way, well, we know where it can lend to or lead to. And we see that beautifully displayed, or maybe I say horribly displayed, in many, many schools and places. My son happens to be an educational assistant, and he works with especially disability and special needs children. And he often says to me, Dad, these guys are very, very good at manipulation and using their disability to their advantage. And because naturally people want to be kind, and we live in a society where we should be very, very, open to people with disabilities and, helping those along. But from time to time, they use that as an advantage to be able to get what they want. Well, that's the human condition. But James says something that is so powerful. He says this, you have not because you ask not, because you're asking for the wrong thing and you're going about it the wrong direction. What James is suggesting is try a new path. Try a new mindset. Try a new outlook, a new vision, a new view. Now, let me give you a very practical illustration. I happen to, from time to time, wear glasses. And it was interesting that a couple days ago I was having a medical examination. They were checking out my hearing. And the lady there, she said to me, "So you have a little struggle hearing?" I said, "Yes, I do." She says, "Well, I struggle with my eyesight." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah, if I take my glasses off," she says, "I cannot, navigate this room." And I was thinking the same thing about my wife. My wife, she has to wear glasses because if she doesn't wear glasses, basically she's as blind as a bat. And sometimes when she's driving, I'm thinking to myself, this lady's driving by the force. No, it's not that bad. But the simple fact is, one day, for fun, we traded glasses. And my goodness, well, I want to tell you, I felt like I was in one of those fun houses. I was going, whoa, 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 because of that. And I remember the very first time I had progressive lenses. That means that, basically you have bifolds, and in the middle you have the kind of middle, and then you have your other type of prescription. So you have actually three prescriptions in one. And this was a long time ago, but I remember for the first 2 weeks, my head was literally spinning because, you would go from bifocals to the middle to, your regular being able to see far. And it was really kind of interesting. I remember the very first time standing behind the pulpit and trying to read, and I was able to read but then I would go up to look and I go, whoa, and my head would go, whoa. And I remember saying to my congregation, man, oh man, I wish I would have had these 20 years ago. They said, why? I said, because I wouldn't have had to use weed. I would have been able to get my fix that way. Well, the simple fact is, we need to have the right prescription. We got to have the right lens to be able to see certain things. And what I'm asking today is to allow the Lord to give you his perspective, to see things the way that he sees things, and to also as well align your life more towards the positive side of life. It's very easy to criticize. It's very easy to judge, but it's not easy to look and walk in that person's shoes. There was a great First Nations chief who became a Christian, and they asked him, "How can you forgive your enemies?" He was involved with a lot of wars and a lot of skirmishes before he became a Christian. And after he became a Christian, he was an incredibly peaceful man. And they said, "How can you go from a warrior to a man of peace?" He says, "Simple." He says, "I try to walk in that other person's moccasins." He says, "I try to see things from their perspective." He says, I try to walk with compassion. I try to walk with love. And he says, I apply the golden rule. And he says, the great rule of Jesus. That's how he put it. And he said, I try to do unto others as I would have them do unto me. He says, basically, he was saying, it doesn't matter how someone treats you. You treat them the way that you would want to be treated. And that is such an important aspect of life. And there is a simple rule of life. We call it the law of sowing and reaping. It's simply this: whatever you sow, you are going to reap. That's what Jesus said. Jesus said, if you sow kindness, kindness comes back to you. If you show love, love comes back to you. If you sow judgment and anger and cynicism and skepticism, those are the type of things that come back to you. And it's not a good way to live. The best way to live is on the sunny side of life. But that's a simple choice. And part of that process is, of course, being a person of prayer and asking the Lord to help you to become the person that God wants you to be and that you want to be as well. And let me just tell you, it's a day-to-day, moment-by-moment walk. And that isn't easy, but I want to tell you, it is the best way. A little thought for you today. Well, as I always say, if you like what I'm saying, then press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And just realize this, that I have been doing a lot of what we would call YouTube shorts. Check those out as well. They're only 20 to 30 seconds, but boy, oh boy, maybe you'll find them inspirational and helpful. So that's my thought for you today. Have yourself a great day and a great weekend.